I'm Rajul Kansal. I'm your host for the day today. I'll be taking you through this webinar. I'm very sorry for this 1 minute delay. So these are the few companies, few brands that we have collaborated with. We are the exclusive partners for these brands here in this part of the world. This is a little about our organization. We call ourselves the BYLD Group. It's the Build Your Leadership Differentiators Group. Few details about our organization. I'll allow you a moment to go through that and we'll progress ahead. So these are the core offerings from Blanchard Stable. You will find self-leadership mentioned here. If you follow the pointer, this is self-leadership, the program that we are going to discuss today. You would all have heard of the leadership pipeline by Professor Ramcharan. In that leadership pipeline concept or the theory of leadership pipeline, what he talks of is that there's a pipeline that passes or which delivers energy to various levels of leadership across the organization. And every individual is a leader in his or her own right. So self leadership addresses the need of the first level or the first bend of that pipeline, which is an individual contributor. How does an individual use the benefits and knowledge of structures and culture of the organization to his or her advantage to deliver on his or her goals? Is what self leadership talks of. The next is first time manager or Blanchard's management essential. Here we are talking of the bare minimum essentials of for any organization to teach its first time managers or people who are taking the managerial role for the first time. Next to that is SL2 experience. SL2 experience is our world renowned model. It's the flagship program for Blanchard. This is the world's most taught people development and leadership language program. Next to that is team leadership or teams as we like to call it. This program talks of how do you manage the people who are man managers? How do you look at an individual and a team in totality? How do you differentiate what you're going to address and what are you looking at as a challenge? If it's a team challenge, how do you address it at a team level? How do you define or determine where the challenge lies? What is the magnitude of that challenge and how you're going to address it? As we move ahead, we come to leading people through change. Now, this is a strategic leadership program. As the name suggests, in this program, we are talking of how do you lead people into change initiatives. Like any other Blanchard program, this program concentrates on the execution piece of it. It talks of what are the essential steps of people and their concerns when you're trying to create ownership and also accountability to deliver change. How will you ensure people are included in it? How will you ensure that people stay glued to it? And how do you ensure that people are buying the change? They are being a part of the delivery mechanism of this change. Next to that is conversational capacity. Now, this program addresses the need of an entire organization at a cultural level. How do you hold balanced conversations? How do you ensure that these conversations are appreciated and also valued by all people all across? How do you ensure that you're keeping in mind everyone's context? You're respecting full of everyone's context. And how do you know for sure that the best idea is being selected, not the most preferred or the most popular idea? How do you create that trust in the organization is what this program talks of. Now, we would have been wondering of these three programs here. See, this chain is talking of programs which deliver the value that their name suggests. In building trust, we are talking of how do you build trust? How do you manage to build trust? What are the essential steps in building trust? And if you have managed to break trust, what is it that you need to do to ensure that you are able to build trust once again? Coaching Essentials is a program which is a beautiful program about the mindset of a coach. You would have seen in a lot of organizations, a lot of people get certified. ACC, PCC certifications is what they go after. In our experience, it turned out to be a feather in the cap. That's it. On a lot of occasions, we did not find that people were able to build coaching as a language in their organization. And when we checked with everyone as to what could have been the reason for that, we realized that the biggest challenge is that it's a regimented process. It's a regimented, stepwise procedure of going about coaching conversations. And this is why we came up with a program which talks more of the mindset of a coach than the process of a coach. Of course, there is a process. Of course, it is very well researched. However, we stress more on the mindset of a coach. It tells you how to build that capability in each individual to hold coaching conversations. How are you supposed to conduct those coaching conversations? What are the mannerisms? What are you supposed to be careful of? All of that is spoken and it's practiced great deal in this program. Next to that is leading virtual teams. Now you would have you it's almost natural to think that possibly this is a knee-jerk reaction on Blanchard's part. I assure you it is not. We have been delivering this program for more than 7 to 8 years with the biggest organizations of the world. This is not a program that we developed after COVID-19 hit, which is usually the case in most of the cases. We had this program earlier. We always had this program. We are successfully running it with organizations like Aricent, with organizations like WD-40, with organizations like MTN. We are running this program quite successfully. And another example would be the organization called Allianz Technologies. Yeah, these are the core offerings. Now we'll come back to self leadership. These are the supporting programs. These are half day programs available with Blanchard. The beauty of these programs is if you have any ongoing existing learning journey planned in your organization that you're delivering already, you can pick these programs up. You can get certified in these programs. These are pick and run programs. The facilitation material is so well packed and so well designed. You just pick it up, you start, you amalgamate it into any journey and you start running it. most of these programs most of these programs are half a day programs. I would particularly like to talk of legendary services. The legendary service program is one of the most detailed program, and it's not run by a male custom. There's a reason why we started calling it legendary service. It's more because of the feedback that we got from people that we ought to start calling it legendary service. It talks to people of their legendary service vision, the service vision that they have. What is the impression that they want to leave on people? What is the experience they want to leave people with when they leave the organization or when they go anywhere? So it is extremely important for us to appreciate that this program is a thorough and detailed cultural fitment program. It talks of how you create the culture of care in your organization, which is not a facade, which is not something that people put on as a behavior when in front of external clients. How do you take care of your internal clients and their conversations with the same importance that you give to the external clients is what we talk of here. And this beautifully marries with the organization's vitality. Yeah. So devoted clients internally, because everyone is happy serving each other, creates devoted clients outside, and both of them working together give you organization's vitality. Yeah. Coming to self leadership, what do we mean by self leadership? So Blanchard defines self leadership as an essential skill in challenging times. Yeah. Self leadership for us is an essential skill, especially in challenging times. Having the mindset and skill set to get what you need to succeed is self leadership. It talks of self belief, it talks of assumed constraints, it talks of how do you become more proactive, it talks of what are your points of power, and then it gives you the skill set as well. So moving on, this is usually the slide that we begin with. We ask people, if you had the opportunity of really guessing this for yourself, or if your wishes could come true, what would you want your boss to do? What would you want out of this learning experience, etc. And then we take them to the mindset and skill set of self leadership. As you can see in the mindset, we are talking of challenging the assumed constraints. We're talking of activating the points of power, and we are talking of being proactive. Once we have mastered this, we will also need the skill set to be proactive. If you want to be proactive, you ought to know what is your need. And for that, the first thing that comes to our mind is what is your goal? What do you want to achieve? And there's a beautiful statement that we bring in this program, and we say if you don't have the goal for yourself, you will work for someone else's goal. Yeah. So aligning on what needs to be done and by when is what we talk of in goal setting. Then diagnosing is assessing your competence and your commitment on that specific goal or task. Once you've assessed it appropriately, matching is just matching it with the required leadership style so that you're able to get what you want. If you're the leader, you will match it for your people. If you think that you need that from your leader, then you will be able to ask for a matching leadership style. Yeah. It follows the SL2 model. Now, we start with people and their personal learning purpose. Let's say they would have said, these are my potential assumed constraints about attending this training session or this webinar or this discussion. There are people who could say, I'm going to get behind on my work, training is a waste of time, I'm shy, I'd rather learn on my own. So, a lot of reasons that crop up in your mind, whichever has the recency challenge, because it's coming from your recency bias, whatever you experienced most recently as a miss because of some training that you attended will crop up as a prime reason for why not to attend it. Yeah. So the first that we start with is challenging the assumed constraints. That's extremely important. What is a challenge? What is challenging your assumed constraint? Challenging the constraints that keep you back or beliefs that hold you back. May I please request everyone to go on? Thanks. Now, these are the beliefs that hold you back. So when these beliefs become tiring, challenging, we don't realize it. Why? Because these are ingrained beliefs for us. Now, there's a small story that we talk of. I'm sure a few of you would have heard of it. If you've not heard of it, for the benefit of the entire audience, let me just share that story once again. So we see this elephant who, as a child, was brought to this place where people take care of these elephants. So they would tie a small chain to the ground, and they'll put a shackle in their leg, and they'll expect the child not to move away. The elephant, being naughty or possibly just bored of being tied down by a chain, would make few attempts to get loose. And of course, the elephant baby would lose the battle, would not be able to do that. However, as years pass by, the elephant becomes an adult, has 20, 25 times more power, and still the elephant stays glued to that chain because it's ingrained in the elephant's belief that now the elephant can't break the shackle. We speak at length of what are the assumed constraints of people who are attending this workshop with us during the workshop, and our attempt is that they all should understand that there are certain beliefs which are counterproductive for us. Yeah. How do we address that? Before I go there, may I request everyone to type in the chat box quickly? Type in the chat box one assumed constraint that you think you operate with in your work life. If all of us could quickly type it in the chat box, one assumed constraint that we operate with in our work life. So, Atul, did you mean by job, did you mean that we have to do a job? Bhanu says career becomes a huge issue for us, and that's an assumed belief. That's nice. Priya says there's never enough time. Mm-hmm. Oh yes, I think that's very common. I'm not supported by my boss. Yes, that's correct. Only I know, says Dr. Pradeep Sharma. Ahmad Jamal says waking up early. Mm-hmm. Guys, could we all type simultaneously so that it's easier and it's quicker? Mhm. Could all of us type some? All of us who are present in the session. There's not enough time for self. Yes. Thanks, Soumya. So for the purpose of this session, we are keeping the videos off. Thanks, Madhav. So I constantly second guess myself. Mm-hmm. Thanks, Poshali. More work than you can do humanly. Yes. I won't be able to make any difference in the organization's policies or strategies because I'm an individual contributor. That's a huge assumption. Right? Difficulty in maintaining work-life balance. That's another challenge that we work with. Yes. Mm-hmm. Not having enough skills to attempt something new. All right. That's new. Targets, and we are unable to achieve in timely manner. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thanks, Indu. This won't work for me as it didn't work for others. That's nice. Mm-hmm. So these are few examples of assumed constraints that we operate with in our work life. Yeah. And once we break the shackles of these assumed constraints, I'm sure all of us are aware that possibly this is something that we are keeping very close to our chest because we believe very deeply in this. However, it may not always be correct. Yeah. So once you move ahead of that, we inform everyone how do you challenge your assumed constraints. So all of us would have attended some emotional intelligence class on some subject related to delivering that subject. And it very clearly states the emotion that you clearly call out will will stop or possibly recede in its effect on us. Yeah. So what is an assumed constraint? Let's take an example. I won't stay focused because I'm concerned that I'm getting behind on tasks and emails by attending this program. What could be a flip? If you wanted to flip the emotion, if you wanted to change the way you looked at it, I'll be present and I'll stay focused on learning without multitasking. Because what I learn will help take my career to the next level. Here, when we have flipped it, we have also managed to look at the same situation differently. And when we are doing that, the biggest miss by most of us is we do not write the action that will follow this. There is a constraint that we all agree. There was a constraint that we all had written. We flipped the emotion. We flipped it. We flipped the way we wanted to look at it. I'm sure all of us, if all of us could type a yes in the chat box, if we have ever experienced a flip of viewpoint at some point. Let's say there is a person that we don't like and someone comes back to us and says that, this person was talking nice about you, and suddenly we start looking at the situation differently or the person differently, right? So this has happened with all of us. So when you flip, so it's a resounding yes from all of us. Now what does it do? It gives us a fresh look at the same situation. When that happens, the best thing to do is to decide about an action that you will take. One of those actions could be, I'll check my emails or texts only during breaks. Yeah, only during breaks. The biggest miss in challenging your assumed constraints is when you do not define it at an action level. That's the biggest miss. Yeah. Now, with that, we'll come to the skill set. The skill set is goal setting, diagnosing, and matching. And we need to align with our leader or our team members on all three of them. Are you goal smart? So, because smart as a thought is really ingrained in all of us. So we didn't shift it. At Blanchard, what we did was we came up with a different different explanation to that. So S and T, it's actually STRAM for us. S and T is what we write. S is specific. What does a good job in it look like? Yeah. What will tell us? What will happen that will tell us we've been successful in it? And T for us is the task level detail. Okay. So in STRAM, S is specificity, T is the task level detail. What do I need to do to ensure that I'm able to complete my goal, the specific goal that I've written. R is checking if it is relevant for the organization. A is checking if it can be actioned. It may be relevant for the organization, it may not be actioned. Yeah, it can't be actioned. And M is it motivating for me or for anybody for that matter as an individual? What we will check here, which area is my goal missing on? Is it specific? Is it trackable? If it is, then is it relevant? If it's not, then I need to renegotiate it. If it's not actionable, I again need to renegotiate it. But if it is not motivating, then I need to reframe it. Because if it's not motivating, then I just need to look at it differently, as we discussed just now. Yeah. Now, if I may request all of you to take a moment and type in the chat box if this is the development level journey of an individual. Just by looking at the the sequence, if you could tell me which would be D1, D2, D3, and D4, and why? Why do you think it is like that? Could you type it in the chat box? The CADB, we have written that. D1, D2, D3, D4, we have written that. Could you tell me how can it be that a D1 is happy and a D4 is not? So let me share with you a small story of how I learned how to drive the car. A small story. So on the first day of when I wanted to learn how to drive the car, just like this lady who's trying to learn how to do a cross country of bicycling over mountains. She knows how to ride the bicycle. On the first day, I was really excited, like she is. She's really excited that she's starting that journey of learning it. Yeah. But when she came across a few turns, she fell down and she realized it's unlike riding it on the roads. It's very different. It's a different skill. She fell down on a lot of occasions. There would be a few occasions where she would feel, if I'm falling down every time, what's the fun in trying it again? Right? So she could be thinking or contemplating of quitting as well. Once she was past that, she went to a stage where she convinced herself that she's going to persevere. And here, now, if she persevered for 15 to 20 days, assuming that this is how long it took for her to learn this skill, she now only has a few tricky challenges, like the chain coming undone or some very tricky turns that she needs to understand how to maneuver through if there are strong winds which are passing by, or there are few vehicles which are heavy vehicles who are gushing past you. How do you manage your balance, or possibly how do you maneuver those tricky turns? That's your D3, development level 3. Yeah. Once you've aced it completely, you're highly excited about doing it, and you're also quite capable of delivering it all by yourself. So this is a D4 stage. When you were a D1, you wanted specific instructions from your from whomsoever was teaching you how to do that, because you were absolutely new, but you were very excited. At D2, you first needed some support from your leader, some words of wisdom, some words assisting you in bringing your confidence back in your own capability, and then you would need some specific direction. At D3, you just want someone to give you specifics about, a lot of support and answer a few questions of yours. That's it. Not much. Less of direction, but a lot of support. And at a D4, you just want people to, delegate it to you. That's it. Nothing more. Now, my request is, just take a moment of pause, think of the key deliverables that you have, and just think of which development level you are in that key deliverable. All right. So we see a D2, a few D3s, few D2s. Mm-hmm. Right. So when you know where you are at, it's very easy. Don't you think it becomes very easy for you to ask for that specific style of leadership that you need? And imagine the ease with which your leader will be able to provide that if the performance pressure is not on the leader. If the pressure of finding out where the individual is at is not on the leader. When you're able to easily inform your leader where you're at and what is that specific leadership style that will work for you. Yeah. I need some direction, just give me some points, and that's good enough for me. Or I need a lot of support because I think in this I'm losing my confidence. The leader says, all right. At this moment, I would like to take a pause, and if you want to unmute and ask a question, we are open to that. You want to ask a question on this? Or you want to type your question in the chat box? Either of the two options is open to you. You want to ask the question in the chat box? All right, we'll move on for now. However, if at all some question appears in the chat box, I'll just take it up then. Yeah. There are times that you will get a muddy diagnosis. There are times that you will think that on a lot of occasions, I think I'm a D4. On few occasions, I think I'm a D3. What do you think this muddy diagnosis means? A clear diagnosis versus a muddy diagnosis. If on most of the occasions you think you are a D1, then you should assume that you're a D1, which means if on that subject, on a lot of occasions, you need a lot of clarity, you need a lot of direction, then it's prudent to assume that you are at a D1. Okay. However, there are times that you start believing that there's a very muddy diagnosis. On occasions, I think I'm a D4. On occasions, I think I'm at a D3. A simple method to arrive at where you're at is, first draw a line between D1, D2 and D3, D4. Yeah. And then ask yourself the first question: have I done this in this organization? Whatever goal or task I'm diagnosing for, have I done this or has my team member done this in this organization? If you have done it in this organization, you are either a D3 or a D4. You're here. If you have never done that before and you're attempting it for the first time, then you're here. Yeah. Once you've decided which part of this, you know, which batch or group of these D1, D2 or D3, D4 you belong to, then the next question to ask is, am I excited to do this job? If you're excited about it, you're either a D1 or a D4, depending upon your answer to the first question. Let me repeat this. The first question to answer is, have I done this before in this organization? If I've not done this before in this organization, I'll be a D1 or a D2. I'll be here in either of these two. If I've done this before in this organization, I can either be a D3 or a D4. The second question to ask is, am I excited about this job? And do I need anything to further boost my spirits? If I'm fairly excited about doing it, I'm either a D1 or a D4. If I'm not highly excited about it, then I'm either a D2 or a D3. Again, depending upon my answer to the first question. Yeah. Once we clarify that, we can move ahead. There are times that you may possibly get, there are times that you may possibly get a split diagnosis where you're excited and you think you're excited and that's why you're D4. You're very excited, but you think you're a D1. A simple question to ask is, do I think that I need to ask someone anything? Do I need to ask anyone anything to complete it to the satisfaction of how the goal was designed or defined? If I'm self-reliant and I can pull this off myself, I'm a D4. If I need specific direction and specific steps about how to go about it, then I'm a D1. Yeah. And the D1 goes and asks for specific steps. And the D4 says, just leave it to me and I'll pull this off. My request is for you to just take a moment of pause, reflect in this new information, and try and see in each critical goal or task, where are you at? You don't have to necessarily share it in the chat box. Just reflect about it. Now, when we have come to a conclusion about where we are at in our development level on our tasks or goals, there is a group of directive behaviors which can help us address the competence part of it. And there are a group of supportive behaviors which can help address the support part of it or the commitment part of it. If I'm not highly motivated about something, I would need someone to come in and provide some support so that I can really uplift my spirits and start to deliver on it. However, if I'm lacking in skill, if I'm lacking in the capability to deliver something, I lack in directive behaviors. I need directive leadership behaviors.
Yeah.
It will lay down the path very clearly for me to move ahead. Yeah. If you look at all the directive leadership behaviors, you will realize what they're doing is they're laying down the path. They're showing you the path. And when you look at the supportive leadership behaviors, they're more looking at addressing you at a human level. And all of these behaviors assist in uplifting your sense of self, your sense of own capability. Now there's another aspect. Once we clear the once we clear this aspect of matching it with the appropriate leadership styles, there's another concept that comes in, and that concept is of points of power. Yeah. Now, what are your points of power? The 5 points of power are position power, task power, personal power, relationship power, and knowledge power. Why only five? French and Raven had done a very deep study. They were sociologists, and they studied all through the history of mankind, even in autocratic societies and setups. How is it that there were certain people who were even more influential with no given authority? With no given authority, how is it that there were certain people who were even more influential than the king or queen himself or herself? And this is where they realized that in any structure and in any setup exists the concept of points of power. You can still wield power despite not having clear laid down written authority on a lot of subjects. The first such power is the position power, which means having the title or authority to make those certain decisions. The second to that is task power. If you've been assigned a certain task, which gives you control or which gives you power in the context of that task over others, that's your task power. Then there is your interpersonal skills, your capability to influence people, wherein people think that you're a person that will be able to lead them, who's a good listener. This gives you personal power, which is having those skills. And usually you'll find these are very important leadership skills as well. Next to that is relationship power. When you don't yourself have any power in the system, you try to associate with a person who has power. And this is called relationship power, being connected with the people who have power. Yeah. Trying to stay in their good books so that you can get your job done. Next to that, and one of the most important aspects in power, is knowledge power. This power trumps all other points of power. It trumps all other points of power. The biggest challenge with people who have knowledge power is that you will find that these people usually have less of personal power. Have you experienced it that the scientists, people who are really deep in the research and study of their subjects, they are very bad at social and behavioral skills. People who go deep into knowledge power are very high in personal power. Now, if you were to create a wheel of all these points of power, you can very easily realize in the context of any goal or task where you are lacking. This individual has very strong personal power. People keep coming to this person, but this person is wasting a lot of time in maintaining relationships and is not working on his or her knowledge. And because the person has good influence over people but does not have knowledge, the task has not been assigned to him or her. And for that, he or she leveraged the relationship power with the position, with the person who's in position or authority. Yeah. Imagine a situation if I had knowledge power and I was sensible to manage the relationships as well pretty well. If I had both of these high, task would ideally get defined by definition, it will be assigned to me because I have knowledge, I have expertise, I have the required certifications, and I have the know-how. I'm the expert, and I'm able to get people to rally behind me because I have very strong personal power. People listen to me. When they need someone who's going to listen to them, they come to me. So I'll be able to rally people behind me, and that's a huge power to have. When you have that power, the task power gets defined to you or assigned to you. Yeah. So it's very important whenever you are operating on any goal or task in your work environment, just look at the points of power and see which power do you have in this scenario. It's not necessary, and let me clarify it. It's not necessary for you to have all four or all 5 points of power in all the contexts. Where you need to understand what is the leverage that you have, what are the levers that you can pull, and that's again a great way of looking at points of power. Now, not realizing your own power could be your biggest or greatest assumed constraint. Yeah. If you don't realize the power that you have in the system, it could be your greatest assumed constraint. Okay, so Tanya has asked me how knowledge power is different from the task power. So, Tanya, knowledge power is you have the required certifications, you have done certain courses, and you have also demonstrated the application of that knowledge in your workplace. That is knowledge power at its best. It's been demonstrated in the workplace. You know the application of it, and you also have the required knowledge that you've gathered through getting educated in the subject. So you'll find yourself very high on knowledge power. Task power is that there's a task which has been assigned to you. So let's say you are the expert in, let's assume that you are an expert in automobile engineering and you have created some great designs. But in your office space, let's say you are working for Harley Davidson, you are not working for the design team yet. You're still working on the shop floor. You're still working on the wheels. Yeah. So knowledge power is what you are demonstrating time and again, and yet you could not have the task power as of today. So that's the difference between your task power and knowledge power. On the other hand, there could be someone who already has that power. So, Dr. Pradeep Sharma has asked me which power is generally dominant in any organization. That's a very important question, and that's a very deep question. It depends on the personality of the organization and the structure of the organization. In flat organizations, you will find a lot of people have personal power and task power because people are very closely, it's almost like a very closely knit environment. But you will find that this happens in organizations which have fewer people. They can only afford to have a flat organization. Wherever there are a number of people who are increasing, wherever you find that there are a lot of people who started to work, you have to, as a matter of control, you have to bring in a lot of layers. In those layers, position power and relationship power, they start to take precedence. The person who's in position and the people that he or she has good relationships with, they start getting precedence. In such a structure, the person with knowledge power will have to really bang on the doors of authority to get assigned the task power. Usually, the relationship power will define the task power in a thickly populated organization. Yeah. Now, I'll request you to reflect a little in this new knowledge that we have discussed just now. And this might be a good time. If at all you want to ask any questions, I'll welcome that. As we worked on the research of this program, we realized we came across a very good research output. which told us how differently can managers and employees think of the same context. Now, we ran a study or a survey across geographies, across continents, and across cultures with more than 1,000 managers and their team members. The number of team members is not disclosed here, which would be, of course, in thousands. In the survey, to our amazement, we found that this is what the employees wanted from work. Their first priority was interesting work. It does not mean that everyone wanted interesting work only, but most of the employees ranked interesting work highest. The second highest was full appreciation of work done. Third was feeling of being in on things or being informed of things, being kept informed in the loop. Yeah. The fourth rank was given to job security, fifth rank was given to good wages, and sixth was given to promotion and growth in the organization. However, this is how managers ranked the priority of what people wanted from work. They ranked good wages as the first priority for people, job security as the second, promotion and growth in the organization as the third, and good working conditions as the fourth. Do you see the disparity in responses? What the employee considered the most important and most interesting is something that their managers ranked as fifth, which is almost in the middle. Not high priority at all. They got it all incorrect. Yeah. What does it tell us? It tells us that managers are not mind readers. It's not that we were not already aware of it, but then this further substantiates the claim. And what it also tells us is that we need to take control of our own success in any organization, because managers are not know it all people. They don't know it all. There's a study that we usually run in self leadership as a program where we try to capture the perceptions of the self leader and his or her manager. If this is how the self leader ranked himself or herself, you know, possibly this is the graph that you're looking at coming from the manager. Possibly. And if this is the graph that you're looking at coming from managers, what does it tell you? If I were the manager, if I were the self leader, I'll be really deeply concerned about this disparity. I think I'm doing great at matching conversations, but my manager thinks different, and different by a long margin. Yeah. I would like to hold my conversation with my manager about the goal setting piece and the matching piece, where I think that there's a lot of disparity in where I rank myself and where my manager ranks myself. Could you type in the chat box quickly? What do you think could be few reasons of this disparity? What do you think could be leading to this? Anything that pops up here. There are times that people say that yes, the boss may not be fully aware of what you are or what you are doing. Communication, yes, Tanya. Lack of communication. See, what you're doing with your team, there are times the bias, yes, that could be a great reason too. On a lot of occasions, what happens is what we are doing with our team and what we are telling our boss or our supervisor that we are doing with our team are two divergent things. If we think that because of the personality of what he or she demonstrates, my boss, I give a very soft behavior and a very soft handling to my team members. However, When I'm sitting with my manager, I pass on the information that I am really, ruling the roost. I give them very specific instructions of task and I see to it that they deliver on it. What does it do? Yeah. When that happens, when you pass on a message that you think or assume will pass on a message to people or your boss in specific, that this is how I am dealing with them so that you are celebrated by him or her. This is where this disparity of communication comes. And usually in highly authoritative environments, even the team members are not able to pass on the appropriate response to what they're experiencing. Yeah. However, to ask for what you need is in your best interest. Ask for what you need. You've come to an organization to succeed. It's the responsibility of the organization to provide you with the resources, but you can't hold them to it. Find the resources that you need to succeed. And this is what the journey of a self leader should be about. With that, I'm open to any questions that you all may have. I'll be happy to answer them. And thank you very much to all of you for coming for this session on self leadership. You can type your questions in the chat box. I'll be happy to take them. If at all you feel that you need to connect separately with me, just write into me. I'll be happy to connect back with you. Any questions? So the person possessing personal power would automatically generate good relationship with others. Then how does it do it different from each other? No. So personal power, Rakhi, refers to how you're able to manage the relationships all across, not just with the person in authority. Okay. However, when you're talking of the other point of power, which is personal power, I'm sorry, the point of power where you have personal relationships, which is not your personal power. See, okay, let me explain it like this. When we talk of personal power, we are talking of here. When we talk of personal power, we are talking of your being great at interpersonal power. Okay, you're being able to influence people. When you're talking of relationship power, you're banking on the relationship. You don't wield any power. Here, it is the individual, you, who has the power. Here, you're drawing from someone else's power because you have neither of these points of power in this situation. So you need to wield the power from a person who has positional power. Okay, that is the difference. So guys, if you don't have any further questions, then I would just like to inform you all that we have a public workshop that we have planned on 15th of July. If you think you would like to enroll yourself or you would like to nominate a few people from your organization, we'll be happy to listen from you. We'll be waiting to hear from you and we'll be very, very happy to connect with you on that. 15th of July is the self leadership public workshop planned with Blanchard. If you've come through some individual who has connected with you, please contact the person back. Look for a seat to attend the entire program in great detail. If you've come through our social media work, please reach back to us. We'll be happy to accommodate your request to get you to attend this workshop. With that, I thank you all for coming to this session. We really, really value your participation. Thanks a lot for asking your questions and clarifying your doubts. You can use the information mentioned on this slide to connect back with me. I'll be happy to connect back with you and answer your questions. Thank you very much. And with that, we conclude this session. Pleasure.